when he goes to Paris and gets involved with the literary world of surrealism, which is led by André Breton, the author of the first manifesto of surrealism. Also, Breton becomes like a kind of alternate father figure. And of course, another almost grandfatherly figure is Freud, constantly sort of lurking in the background of much of Dalí's work of this period, and somebody admired enormously, not only by Dalí, but by many people of his generation. The author, as I mentioned, of the Interpretation of Dreams, published in 1900. This is a view of the frontispiece. So in this, towards the end of the 20s, just as he's preparing his trip to Paris, he starts to make paintings like this, which are rather different than, like the girl's back I just showed a minute ago. And really reveal an attempt to enter into the world of surrealism and to introduce all sorts of little details that have mythic and Freudian notions to them. And there are truly disturbing paintings, and would have been much more disturbing in 1929 than they would have been today. They would have been extremely strange, and even sometimes so strange that surrealists found them odd. His friend Buñuel again on the beach, visiting. Some of these friends came down to visit Dalí during the summers in Caracas, and they didn't spend every single moment in Paris. They often would meet on the beach in the summers. So apart from the painting, The First Days of Spring, I have to mention the film. I just showing you a few images. It was pretty startling, and it continues to be a very sort of powerful and coherent piece of filmmaking even today, which is curious, because I mean this was made in 1929, and it begins with this scene which is sort of represented more or less in the stills on the left, where a figure who's played by Buñuel slices using a razor the eye of a woman. It's done through some sort of cut. It doesn't really do it, but I think they sliced the eye of a pig or something. I'm not sure they were terribly worried about whether animals were hurt in the production of this film. The ants that appear in another scene covering a man's hand who's trying to force his way in order to sort of impose his intentions on the woman in a kind of melodramatic tone. Buñuel asked Dalí to put them in a box and bring them from Spain to Paris so that they could have real Spanish ants, as if French ones weren't good enough. And then there's a scene with these two priests that are being kind of pulled on a piano by a donkey with a sort of a dead donkey, and one of them is played by Dalí himself. So you see, it was a very odd film, because the detail of that first shot, that film opens like that, and then cuts to the eye slicing. There's also a shot of the moon passing above, so it's full of tropes that come from silent cinema. This is almost, could be out of a film of terror or something like that. I think Dalí was very interested in popular cinema, much more so than in Murnau and the great sort of artistic directors of the period that he tended to sort of reject. Here's a little more detail of the piano with the rotting donkeys. There he is with the other actor, Batchev, being pulled along by the piano. Dalí had studied, incidentally, at a school of Marist brothers, so I imagine somehow he could insert himself into this role quite easily. Just to give you an idea of who some of the surrealists were, and this photo I've always found sort of intriguing because Dalí's there in the middle of it, so even though he's not the leader of surrealism, just to my left, if I'm facing it, of Dalí would be André Breton, who's the leader, and then Paul Éluard, who was another person who created it, and the other side of Dali is Max Ernst and Man Ray, and just behind Max Ernst is Tanguy, and so here's Dali kind of at the center of surrealism. Very early on, 1931. He's only been around for a couple of seasons, and he's the new sort of star of surrealism, which had been around since 1924, but had gone through some big changes in 29.